Hello and welcome to episode number, what are we at now? 17 of the Rick Chappell podcast, where I chit-chat about life and what's going on. And this week, check it out, there's a synthesizer. I have this thing on loan from work. I really want to buy it. We'll see if I end up actually doing such a thing. But for now, hey, it's on the desk. And it makes the pretty noises. Right? Music and stuff. These are the things we try to do to separate ourselves from the other podcasts out there. And by we, I mean the royal we. Just this guy. How you been? What's going on? As always, I'm Rick Chappell. And you're clicking on this for a reason unknown to me. Maybe it's because you find it entertaining. Maybe it's because you know me in the real life and you try to support me on things. Maybe it's just because the algorithm said, hey, check out this guy. Either way, welcome. Starting it off, we always started off now with comments. So, we don't have tons this week, but the first one's quick and simple. On my Steve Vai Devin Townsend cover. By the way, we're going to talk about Devin Townsend a lot this week. I can already tell. It's part of why I'm playing this guitar. Anyways, the comment on it says just simply, "You're great." And that's nice. So, yeah. Moving on from that. The next comment is actually one that has some substance to it. So, not that the other one doesn't count. Thank you, sir. It's very kind. That video was difficult to do. Okay, let's just go right into more detail, always, right? That's the point of the podcast. I did that video at not a fun time in my life. It was during, the pandemic, and we all had our own experiences during that were all sorts of levels of isolated and not great, you know. I know you know. And anyways, in a bid to try to get myself out of it, of one of those phases, you know, I decided to do a bunch of Devin Townsend covers. Because I was like, hey, I'm listening to a bunch of this music. I have a bunch of the tools. Let's just give her. Why not? And it ended up ballooning into collaborations and all these awesome things that can happen if you just make stuff, you know? I'm gonna get it smoother, that the reaction times to the synthesizer are on point, and I'll figure out some more chords than just those ones. But man, this thing is so fun. Hey Kev. Oh, goodbye Kev. I can get so distracted in all of the buttons on it. We're gonna try not to do that though, while we're on camera. It's a Korg mini log for those gearheads that are curious. Anyways, we are still doing comments, right? Good old Mr. Freberg, the guy who literally sold me this guitar. I think you should be really proud of yourself for maintaining these podcasts as weekly deliveries. They're awesome. Thanks, man. Doing it weekly has been really tough in some ways. I took a couple months off. We're on episode 17, and I've been doing this. I started this year, July or June. I don't know. Either way, if you do that math, you can tell there's some missing weeks in there. But we're definitely on a streak that's gone well. So hey, we're gonna keep on it, right? With the fresh camera angles and lighting, pretty much weekly, right? Anyways, the segments, 6 of your high bar goal of 10. This week I wrote down 10, ladies and joims. Tend to run 10 minutes, which I think is great. Think you'd be willing to spend 20 minutes describing your Devin Townsend Creative Academy experience, though. I bet your perspective on the class would be illuminating for many others. Hope you're having a good week. Of course. Yeah, no, I'll tell that story. That class, that lecture series, whatever you want to call it, was amazing for me because it came at a really unique time that I needed something like that, basically. So, for those that don't know, the Devin Townsend Creative Academy is, it's still a website you can go on to. It's a bunch of lectures that Devin Townsend did and put together, like slideshows and talking. Essentially like this, but with slideshows. And, in it, I actually did prepare, so I brought up a bunch of it. There's things like, each module is like songwriting, recording, production, vocal techniques, managing yourself and others creatively, guitar specifically, mixing a song, happens to be the song Disruptor off the album Key, writing a song where he literally writes a whole tune that's not released to the public to this day as far as I know. And then there's a whole bunch of free lectures that were like a couple hours long, and then the guy who threw it together, I believe his name's Rodney, put in a course about managing, Andy Farrow, that's it. Andy Farrow put in a course of how to manage a band, and then there's a whole thing about touring and preparing for that, and it's an amazing course. It's pretty much a one-stop shop for how to do what he happens to do. And the reason I signed up for it, and the reason it really came in handy, is I experienced a massive brain injury right before. So I was in a serious car accident that has left me doing good now, but man, there's a little dent in my forehead and some metal in there and all kinds of fun stuff. And it's a little dramatic to say I forgot how to do everything, because I didn't. In 2 weeks I was at home doing stuff and living life again, and in 8 weeks I was back at work, or 6 I think. My memory's not the best of the time, funny enough. But I definitely could use the helping hand of like, oh, here's how I do my entire signal chain and how I clean this up. All those little problem solving things, like having your recording setup ready to go. One cable to do guitar and bass and acoustic and everything. Like, why have, you only have so many inputs on an interface, and I'm spoiled to have like 16 at this point. It'd be 18 if you count a couple extra stuff. But even with that said, it all comes from one guitar cable or one microphone or one keyboard. You try to sum it all up and keep all this stuff running smooth and clean in the times that you're not super inspired. Because if you don't feel like writing a song, you can always wrap a cable, things like that. It's a really useful lecture series. I could go for watching it again, I'm sure. I've shared it with 1 or 2 friends over the years. One guy took absolutely nothing away from it. One guy took a lot away from it. So, it all depends, like any kind of learning thing, how into it you are, and are you going to actually implement the things, right? Like, am I actually remembering which buttons on the synth do the notes that I'm playing on the guitar? And can I find a way to do them while I hold the guitar? We're getting there. We're getting there. Speaking of Devin Townsend, just real quick again, I should say, find it a little funny that he's started a weekly podcast series on Sundays, the same day as the Rick Chappell podcast. Not that he's ever seen it, but I'm like, at least I beat him to it, so no one can say I'm copying him, That's important. And I want to get that synth just the right amount of background, Watch, this will be the only time the synth ever makes an appearance, because on playback I'll be like, wow, that's really annoying. I don't want to talk about gear the whole time, and you asked me to spend 20 minutes talking about the Devin Townsend Academy. I don't know how much I can share, because I don't want to give away anything of it, because it's not free. But to go over maybe some of the modules just a little bit from what I do remember from years ago. Songwriting techniques. I think the best tip I took away from that was, if you're struggling with a song, finish it every day. That's a John Lennon quote, so there's that one for free. If you can finish it right away, do. Like, it's better to do it today than tomorrow. You can always go back and play the part better, but at least play the part in such a way that you can go, okay, there's the part. And as you get better, you'll find that you can play the part in a way worth keeping, usually, earlier on in the process. So when and if you do that, it gets better. Yay. But the Devin Townsend tip I will give away for free because I'm decided to at this point. Was he said like to write multiple courses even for a song, write 2 or 3 courses, because you'll find that, you know, maybe the best one is a combination of some of the other ideas put together. And I've done that and it's worked. So you should do that because it'll work. Recording and the recording process, that just talks about how to do it yourself, typically. Like, he works at home, most of us have a home that we work in. It's easy to have a home studio these days. I mean, I happen to have this extra room in my apartment now that I have no roommate, aside from little Kev back there. And, well, there's another cat, but she's the only one in frame, you know? But you can do it with nothing but a laptop and some headphones, you know? And the extra speakers help, and outboard gear sounds fun, and tools are great. But you can always at least make music these days, which is really cool. Devin's guide to... Oh, sorry, I'm skipping over things. The production and my production process that's his thing. I'm not going to get into that. Devin's guide to vocal techniques. It's warm up a lot and send it, which is similar to mine, except for I don't warm up all that much. I don't sing in public really all that much either. Like, I don't have to sing any more than I ever want, which comes in handy because I think it saves your voice to only have to do, like, you know, what damages those guys in the long run, I think, is always touring and doing this stuff every night for weeks and months on end when it comes to high-pitched screaming and stuff. And that'll kill you, essentially. But I stay home, I drink a lot of water, and I sing a couple times a day, maybe, you know. I have a burning question for my famous customer at work, Mr. Chad Kroger, of the great band Nickelback, because he does come into my work sometimes. And the question, I always hit him with one, because I don't want to pester him with questions, but hey, like, by the time you're checked out and spent the money, I'm going to get one question in. And he's always cool about it. So the next question I have is, hindsight being what it is, would he write, perform, change anything in terms of their songs and his vocal technique? Because I understand that he's had his issues with surgeries and whatnot, and he still sounds great to this day. But, like, hey, hindsight's 20/20. Honest answer, I'd love it. But he hasn't bought anything at a music store in a while, or at least not the one I work at. He lives in my town, which is why that happens. I'm not flexing anything than a retail job in a small town. Lecture number 5, managing yourself and others creatively. That's interesting because it's not something I've done great. I could use to watch that one again, maybe. It comes to, like, managing personalities in a band, and, you know, what do you do when the drummer wants to be a singer? Or, you know, not that that's something that came up with him, that's something that's come up with me. You know, I have come to realize with myself, this is going to sound pretentious, but I am more of a producer than a bandmate. I just can do it myself, and therefore don't have a lot of patience for other people, or people that won't do things, at least in the direction I need them to go. For example, if a drummer won't play to a click, I can't work with that guy. Like, as fun as it may be, just I function to a click track. It helps. It's how I record. It's how I'm able to get recordings done, because I don't have an entire studio. You can do one thing at a time and layer them, you know. It's magic. Click tracks, they're great. But yeah, I also find I don't need a band, because the live music scene for a completely independent artist who can't make up his mind of what genre to produce overall, he says 2 albums in, isn't demanding. So if I had to do a show, I know a handful of musicians and I could probably pull one off, but I don't have to do one. I don't have, the phone's not ringing for one, you know? Maybe after this upcoming record's done, it'd be fun to play songs live. Of course I want to do that, but I haven't seeked it out in any way. I don't even know if that's the correct way to say that. I haven't been seeking it out, let's put it that way. And it's not the kind of thing that seeks you out all that much, you know? Anyways, and the next lecture was Devin's Guide to the Guitar. I'm not going to do that one, but we will talk maybe just about this guitar, because it's a Devin Townsend-esque model guitar. Not esque, it literally is. This podcast used to be a new guitar every single week. We've run out. That's how that goes. So now I'm just playing whatever guitar I feel like, and I knew this week we were going to be talking about Mr. T there. So why not use the Stormbender? This is a 2016 Framus Stormbender prototype. It's the 24 3/4 scale version. There's a video online of Devin explaining the 2 models essentially that exist out there, the smaller and the bigger one. And this is the smaller one in that video that he talks about. So there you go. I've dwindled it down to like maybe a dozen or so of these that exist on the planet, as far as I know. They were never sold to the public. Some employees seem to have built them for themselves. And this is one of them. It's got a bunch of features I've come to love and seek out in other guitars. Locking tuners, which I always knew I liked. Ebony board, which is always beautiful. Mahogany body, maple top like a Les Paul. These are just classics. The Evertune. It was my first guitar ever to have an Evertune, and now my 3rd in the stable. Maybe you can even see 2 back there if the crop is right. The Evertune is the best thing in the world. Especially for recording. Which, since, like I said, I'm not playing live all that much, I'm kind of always just hanging out or recording. So, having a guitar that's perpetually in tune to a surgical degree means you can just play along with synthesizers and things like that and play your big chords or leady things and still bend. Some people think you can't bend. I met a guy, said it messed with his vibrato. I think he just needed better vibrato, and I'm sure that was terrible vibrato in their eyes. But who gives a fuck? At least I did it. Point being, this is a great guitar. My particular one, I've mentioned this multiple times, is turning gray. It's supposed to be black. It came blacker than it currently is. But, hey, we all turn gray over time, I guess, right? So this one's aging with me. The next lecture up, lecture number 7, was Mixing Disruptor, which was an awesome one. I love that album. I love that song. I didn't do it. To this day, I have all the multi-tracks. It's very hard to do, so I haven't successfully done it yet, in my opinion. I have multi-tracks for a few Devin Townsend songs, the ones that have been available publicly, nothing secret. Disruptor like this. I have Bend It Like Bender, that was in a box set, and Jular, I think, was in the same box set. And I believe those are all. I do have a friend who sent me some stems of other things that have blown my mind. And sidetrack here, we'll talk about AI and the John Lennon thing that we've all been talking about lately. It's super cool that there's tons of apps out there that will do the AI thing and lift things out of tracks. But if you've ever heard multi-tracks, it's not the same. It's one thing for it to be like, okay, you can, barely hear the vocal and there's the bass guitar. But if you hear the isolated track of it through recording software, if you have the files kind of thing, there's more frequencies, it's broader, it sounds better. You can actually, it's just different. That's how it actually went together, from what I found so far at least. And it's so much better, man. having the raw tracks for things, you learn so much more because it's just cleaner. When you put up just the kick drum, it's just the kick drum. When you put up just a snare, it's just a snare. And in isolating those things, you can learn so much. And I haven't seen that with any of the AI tools yet. I think they're great for like making cover songs or, stuff like that. I use it all the time to make like click tracks for stuff. Because once again, I live by the click track. But real multi-tracks, the first one I ever got, this is a long ramble about multi-tracks. The first time I ever heard a multi-track recording was Enter Sandman by Metallica. And that one, I don't even know how I got my hands on it. My mom had a friend who lent me an M-Box, like the Pro Tools unit that you had to have back in that day to run Pro Tools, and a USB drive that had Enter Sandman on it, like the tom mics, the guitar stems. Like, it wasn't 192 tracks or anything like wild, but it was 192 kilohertz, and it was probably at least 60 tracks or so. It was insane. So I got to hear all the compositional things and the, I don't have it to this day anymore. I mean, I was 13 maybe at the time that we're talking about here, but I still got to take all that in. And you learn so much so fast that, oh, that's a tom that is making that massive sound. And it's almost like if any of you had music class in Canada, if my 30 weekly viewers are Canadian, you would do like a sequence where you literally learn the instruments. Like, they'd show you a picture of a flute and then you'd play a flute. I'm not saying I didn't know what a drum kit sounded like before this, but to go that, oh, that's the relationship between the kick, the snare, the toms isolated in, oh, that's how the bass guitar fits in with those things. I didn't understand all those things immediately, obviously, and to this day I'm still learning about them. But doing like the Metallica Sad But True cover I did just this year or last year there with Marcel and Omer, Jesus, he's gonna kill me if I say that again. I always forget the actual pronunciation of his name because he changes his name all the time on Facebook. And that's what I read. I'm just going to go with Low End Spectre Man because that was my favorite one he ever had. With the bass player from the island, Mr. Cordell from Traillight, Marcel from my work, and Marcel from Germany on drums, the Sabbath True cover. I took a bunch of that stuff I learned years ago and used it in that for sure. So that's a big old ramble about Lecture 7 Mixing Disruptor, or, in my opinion, the value of track stems. And with a Devin Townsend song, especially one like Disruptor or something that has lots of layers, it's really cool to hear all those layers. There's a lot of stuff going on you don't always pick up on. And then you see how you put it together to just come out of a pair of headphones. It's very interesting. And like I said, still working at it. Lecture 8, writing a song, putting all the pieces together. I'm not going to spoil that song because that's probably the best part of the whole course. But there's a song he writes, and it's very Devin Townsend-esque in every way, shape, and form. And you gotta have the course to hear it. There's my pitch for that one. And then there's a bunch of free lectures. So I'm sure, or I hope, that if you go to the Devin Townsend CreativeAcademy.com or whatever the website's called, if you Google it, what a pitch. I'm sure if you go to that, you will see that there are the free lectures that you can just see for yourself. And they do give a great overview of what it's going to be. A bunch of it was live, too, I should mention. It's no longer live, like it's all been recorded. But during the thing, there was question and answer periods and, a live audience to the thing in like a podcast, Zoomy format sometimes. So there's a lot there. And then the bonus material, it's preparation for touring. And that's great because it does go into like some of how you build these rigs and in-ear monitors and whatnot. I have one more story I can add to that one when it comes to the Devin Townsend band or project or whatever you want to call it and their touring setup. Is I had the privilege on one of their last tours, Mike St. John, their lighting director, keyboard player, visual guy, this man who does so many things for Devin over the years, was offering tours like of the production setup before the show, of, you know, these click track things and how you run all these things off of MIDI, and, you know, the whole how the show was put together. And he posted that up on Facebook, and I was like, hey, your tour is of the States. I don't live in the States. I live here, and I think it's not that far from where you guys are. Do you want to do a warm-up one where I can come see how it works? Like, what, do you have the ability to do this at home? And he was like, actually, that'd be perfect. Like, it's a practice one. All the stuff is already set up. You're near enough. Yeah, come on by. So I got to go to the jam space, like where the band practiced. They weren't there. I didn't hang out while they played music or anything fun like that. Mike showed me how everything's plugged in, which is the nerdiest way to go to a band studio. Absolutely. But I learned so much yet again. The biggest takeaway, if I can just sum it up, is networking computers together over, well, just Wi-Fi networks, and then doing MIDI over network to let things talk to each other through multiple DAWs. When I did my streaming concert here in April, which I will do another one, maybe not this year, but early next year when the next record comes out, we'll do another concert to promote it. When I did that, I remembered back to all that stuff I learned. So we used Ableton and two computers talking to each other over MIDI, and it all worked pretty well. Like, I did have more planned than I was able to technically pull off. There was some extra camera angle that ended up not being usable. So it was just supposed to be a little more epic than it was. And I can do the sound better. You know, all these things that you aim to improve on over time. But, yeah. That was a great experience there to, again, just learn so much. And obviously it's cool to go to the jam spot and see. There was the guitars there, and, well, not, like I said, I wasn't one to step behind the drum kit and start smashing things or pick up a guitar and start playing it. That wasn't what it was about. But, I don't know. It's neat. Also, there's your 20 minutes, okay? I talked as much as I can about the DTCA. It's amazing. If you are interested, go sign up. It's great. And there's our comments for the week and the DTCA. What's next? I did write down 10 things. Outlier progress. That's something we talk about every week. This synthesizer, as far as I can tell, will not be on that album because that's all done. All of the layers of synths and bippity boops and things, with the exception of any more ideas I get during these next couple, well, weeks or months, depending on how you want to count. For the most part, it's all done. This thing is coming together. I've got a lot of mixing to do and all the singing to do. And 2 more songs or 3 more songs that a friend is going to come over and play violin on. So we're just going to touch that up by adding real violin. Because who doesn't love live strings, man? I haven't put the live strings on every song on the album. They didn't fit on every song, and I wasn't going to ask him to play 12 songs. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I asked him to do 6. So we did 3 at his place a couple months ago. And now during the winter with my carless self, I will be at home for months. And he's going to come here, and we're going to record just the last 3 songs on the violin. And then he wants to write a song because he's a musician himself, and great, but I don't know if we're going to have time to do all that, man, in one day. It's a lot of tracking. It's a lot of ideas. Maybe we will. Maybe we won't. I do now have to get to the part that I haven't done yet this week. It's become a fixture. I don't know how much of a fixture it should be. But it's where I talk about moving stuff around in the studio. The biggest change is I have a lot of leg space now, which you can't see at all, but I'm enjoying right now. I can't even kick the wall if I try. It's awesome. I changed subwoofers. I have a downward-facing Adams subwoofer and a forward-facing Yamaha subwoofer. And we swapped from the downward one to the forward-facing one. Just because in this room I think it works a little better. And yeah, I put it off to the side instead of right ahead of me, so I got all the space. And now I can see some of the pedals better and all those things, you know, the minutia of studio building, like we go over in the DTCA there, come in handy when things are within eyesight, and just having a guitar stand right there, or a spot to put your watch or your phone or any of these things, you know? It's good to have your patterns until you want to change them, and then you can change them all, and that's great. I also have the lighting changed up again, of course. We've had the same key light, let's call it, you know, main light, for many a show now. Same one that I had at the beginning. There was a brief affair with a smaller one that I decided didn't look as good. But I've now added a grid to it to try to look a little more movie star-ish. And the backlight's higher up, and yeah, nobody cares about that. We don't have to really get into that. It's also the old microphone. I still have that other microphone, and I will be using it for singing, but I didn't want to use a pop filter on the podcast. Just gets in the way. And this thing basically never needs a pop filter. It's the bro mic of podcasts. I've had customers refer to it as the Joe Rogan mic. Hurts my heart a little bit. Because Steven Tyler's saying Janie's got a gun through this microphone before Joe Rogan had ever made a podcast. Okay? Michael Jackson saying beat it through this microphone. It was good enough for them to record with. I told the story before, but I had a customer who returned this because it sounded too podcasty. And to this day, I don't know what the fuck that means. Oh, I did have a segment I was going to add to the podcast. I don't know how long this will last for, but it's something we're going to do for this week. It was a suggestion by a viewer. So, hey, there's your plug to leave comments and suggestions. And, hey, we're only on episode 17. We're open to doing some stuff, you know. Album of the week. Something I listened to growing up. Something that means a lot. Something to have on vinyl. You know, something that counts. We're going with Shout at the Devil. Motley Crue. Not their first album. I believe it's their second, but it's the first one that, you know, did anything for them, really. And it's epic. I got this at a flea market in 2008-ish, maybe, somewhere around there, 2007, 2008. I had heard it a million times. It was I loved Motley Crue growing up. And it's just put together awesome, too. Like, this is the kind of packaging you don't see anymore. Mainly because it's super evil with all these pentagrams. Oh. But hey, for the 80s, I'm sure it was pretty cool. This is not a bulletproof album. Motley Crue is not always a bulletproof band. But there's some great songs on it for sure. And speaking of which, my copy is falling apart. Yeah, oh God, no. That spine is not going great. And at one point, they looked like this. So for those of you that don't like drag queens but like Motley Crue, I got news for you. You're a little confused. But seriously, though, no. One of the great songs on here, Shout at the Devil, obviously. Looks That Kill. Too Young to Fall in Love. Helter Skelter is a cover, but it's great. 10 Seconds to Love is not the song I was initially thinking it was. And In the Beginning is really cool because making a album intro is important. I don't know if I'm going to do it this time around. I don't know if this album, I don't want to say needs it because that may make it sound like needing one is a bad thing, but the first song on this album is a song called Long Day. The one I'm making, not Shout at the Devil. It doesn't sound anything like Shout at the Devil. But it doesn't, I don't know, I think it in itself has a good little setup, so it doesn't need wishy-washy sounds on it. There is a track on the album called Hearts to Mend. I believe it's going to be like the grand finale. That has a big, long ambient intro, but that's part of what makes it sound like a grand finale. You know, it's a big, epic piece. It's actually a song that's like 3 and a bit minutes, maybe 4 or 5, I don't know. But with a big whooshy outro and a big whooshy intro that makes the file like 7. So, woo! I'm not lazy. I'm just creative. Right? There's a chord I didn't mean to play. Let's go back to making all the noise. I don't know if I have a full 10 minutes to do on Shout at the Devil. There's, we'll talk about Devin Townsend some more. He did a cover of Shout at the Devil. You can find it on YouTube. It's like half 90s rap rock and half Devin Townsend. And his parts are amazing. And the other guy who's like rapping is fun. Like, these things are neat. Go check it out. Also, my water jug makes for a pretty good record stand. So yeah, we're gonna do a weekly album for the next little bit. I don't have a massive record collection. I have a lot of Devin Townsend albums. We're not gonna do all those. This isn't gonna be one of those things. But I have some classics, and I have one or two that are, I don't know if I have any that are on the newer side. But I have friends with records too, so hey, maybe if you want to send me a record or loan me a record or anything like that, reach out, and that could be part of the show as well. The thing we know about the Rick Chappell podcast is that it's definitely for the music fans, I think. One of my goals with this show, let's call it, well, it is a show, I guess, is that it will help promote my music in a way. That is the thing I do the most, and I think the best at out here. But it's pretty much impossible to promote yourself or get out there as a solo guy when you just make albums and then put them on Apple Music and then go back and make another record. So making content, doing gear reviews, having a social media presence, a website, www.rickchappell.com, and of course this YouTube channel are all supposed to help, right? That's the real goal, babies. We're rocking through this podcast, and you know what? We're at the halfway point, and we're talking about thing number 5 on my list. We're gonna go back to Shout at the Devil, I'm sure, many a time. That's why we kind of leave it on screen there, you know. Maybe I'll just play some keys for a bit while we talk about the food that I was going to talk about next, which is silly. I watch a lot of other podcasts. Part of why I decided to make my own, obviously. Out of key. There we go, we're back. And one of the podcasts I love is Two Bears, One Cave with Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura. And in that one, Bert is always eating stuff or drinking stuff. And it hasn't made me an alcoholic, but it did make me crave Uncrustables. Like the, for those in Canada, they're brand new, essentially, is the point of the story. What an Uncrustable is a peanut butter and jam sandwich with no crust on it. That's it. They're frozen. You have to thaw them before you eat them. My grocery store just got them. I don't know if they're new to Canada or new to my store or whatever. But as soon as I saw them, I was like, well, I gotta try these, because I've laughed at this probably half a dozen, if not 3 dozen, I don't know, I have no memory, times about how much he likes Uncrustables. And they've even popped up on other podcasts. So I'm like, okay, what am I missing out on? Let's try it. They're just a peanut butter and jam sandwich. Like, it tastes exactly like the one you make yourself with white bread. That's it. So I have gotten slightly addicted, and I will order another box, I'm absolutely sure. Because you can just like throw 2 in your backpack and then have them for lunch. Like, I don't even go to McDonald's if I do that. This is affordable, you know? What does it sound like if I play weird chords on here? I have something called 4-note polyphony, which means I can play 4 notes at a time. But some of the chords I try to hit are 5, and then it just deletes some of those notes. But hey, this thing will also just do, like, you know, the synthesizer sounds like. Or, you know, other weird things. I've made 2 patches in it. We're going to stick with the most fun one that I'm loving, which is doing all the arpeggiating stuff. Like, come on, that's just so pretty. I was going to buy this thing, and then I was going to not, and then I was going to, and then I was going to not. And I think if I trade in some stuff, I can afford it. So I'm going to grab this thing and probably leave it set up just right here, because it's the best toy ever. And I ADHD'd right away from talking about Uncrustables. But you can't really talk about peanut butter and jam sandwiches that long. Aside from the fact that one of my coworkers hates it, because he's like, the boomer in me is like, why didn't you just make that? I'm like, because I didn't. Because somebody made it in a factory and then shipped it all the way to Canada. And then somebody else picked it out of the store and then put it in a van and then brought it to my door. And then I put it in the freezer and then I brought it to work. And that's how I make peanut butter and jam sandwiches. This is why I pay so much carbon tax. Thanks a lot, Trudeau. Okay, the next thing up on our list is the guitar I don't have right now, and that is my acoustic. As much as I may appear to have a large guitar collection, which I will not make any bones about, I do have a large guitar collection. I love it. Also, Kevin is so cute back there, bro. I only have one acoustic guitar. I like to think that my collection is very diverse. That's why I have the ones I do. None of them are alike. And in that way, I only have one acoustic because I got the one I really wanted, and that's it for me. I do want a second to have in a different tuning and, you know, kind of spare things, but I haven't needed it. And then out of the blue, the internal bracing of my Gibson J45 has started to let go. So that blows. I've sent it off to my repair guy, whom I know and love, Mr. Dave. He does a bunch of work through our store and then also just privately. Go see him if you have a guitar in Abbotsford and it's broken. He'll make it not broken. So shout out to Dave. But and also, okay, one more thing I should talk about that guitar. He's worked on it before. It hasn't broken before, but as soon as I bought the guitar, I took it to him and I had him rip the pickguard off and then swap out the nut and the saddle for a real bone and then put a better pickguard on it. I'm not a pickguard fan. The reason I asked him to take it off was I wanted to see what it looked like under there and see if I could get away with, you know, not having one. But I got the guitar used, and they discolor so fast that it had already gotten to the point where you would always know that that guitar had a pickguard. So I was like, okay, well, he gave me a couple options of pieces he had that looked a lot nicer than the factory one, to be fair. And I picked one and he applied it, and it looks great. But like I said, when it was having bracing issues, it went back to the guy who has built it almost more than Gibson at this point. So shout out to Dave. The other guitars, we're going to talk about guitars that are just in the process, I guess. There's a dummy guitar back there right now, unfortunately. The Explorer. This is my weekly update of my stable here. I'm waiting on a bridge for that guitar, like actually the tailpiece and the bridge, to put strings on it. I ordered a black bridge and tailpiece, but they take forever to show up in my work. I have a cover song already recorded with everything except for the parts of that thing and singing. So waiting on that. I was planning and am planning to release that video when we hit 500 subscribers, which we're on track to do that by the end of the year. So, hey, hopefully everything lines up, and maybe we hit 500 before I can get the video done, and I do it anyways. But, you know, the algorithm is kind to me for being weekly with my uploads. Also, I keep itching my nose. I have to sneeze or something. Oh my God, it's driving me nuts. But we have 10 to 20 minutes left, so we're going to muscle through. The next thing up is the fact that I vacuumed in here, which might be why I'm sneezy. But the reason I vacuumed, let's get the guitar going again. The reason I vacuumed is that ball of black purring back there spilled a plate of rice just everywhere. And it was dry rice by the time I could kind of notice there, you know, so it was not a fun time. It was crunchy to walk on. I had to vacuum immediately. When I'm eating, oh, sorry, this is driving me nuts. I really have to sneeze, but I don't want to take a break. We're going to be fine. We're going to do it. Oh, we do it live. I said we'll do it live. Anyways, when I'm eating, Kevin is all over this desk, man. She's always just trying to get right on the plate. And it's cute, but it is frustrating. And then when I'm done eating, I'm just like, okay, fine, have at it. Like, have the little piece of chicken or a little bit of rice or whatever it is. Do your thing, kitten. And sometimes she will just take the chicken and drop it on the floor and then run away. And I'm like, thank you, you just made a mess for me. Other times she nibbles at the food and has some rice, and it's cute, and I let her have her thing. So sometimes I'll even just put a plate when I'm done up there where she hangs out and can chow away. And the plate had fallen off of that. Nothing broke, but just rice everywhere. Like, whoo. And not white rice, like a Mexican-style rice that had some zest in it, you know? It was Ben's rice, not Uncle rice. I guess you can't say that anymore. I don't know, man. How the packaging changed. I still buy the syrup that looks like the lady. It's the kind I like. Like good old Kevin in the vacuum. Oh. I don't know if she hates the vacuum. She wasn't in here at the time, but I know animals don't like it. What? My writing is terrible. What's up next on the list, bro? Oh, podcasts. Just talking about other podcasts I like. No, we're doing fine. We don't have to talk about that. All the podcasts I like have millions of views, so they don't need my shout outs. One thing, okay, another thing I've added that you can't even see is there's a tiny old iPad that the battery is gone on, but I've got it set up so I can trigger some things in the synthesizers or the Axe effects or whatever I want. Maybe. I don't know. We're charging it up, and it fits underneath the camera in a way that you can't see. Anything that I can get on my desk and use that is out of the camera eye, I'm all for. We're not doing 10 minutes about an iPad. We will do a couple minutes about video games, though. And we'll do it with the guitar and maybe even the magical beep boops. Because I've actually played some video games for the past... Well, I did it once. But that's a lot for me, man. I don't play a lot of video games. And I intend to do it tomorrow. It's been a holiday today. Today is Saturday. I post these on Sunday. But, yeah. I tried to play Forza, the car racing game. And I say tried, and I did succeed. But because I play the game so infrequently, there's so many downloads always these days. Like updates or patches or whatever you call it. That usually by the time I want to play a game, it's been updated 2 or 3 times and it adds up, and it's like an hour before I can play it. So I can't just sit down, turn things on and be like, oh, I want to play a racing game. I literally planned ahead. I was like, tomorrow I want to play the game. Let's fire it up and download the update. So I did that. And then the reason I wanted to play it was there was an expansion for a bunch of rally things and all that kind of off-roady crazy racing that's fun to do, that I had already bought months and months and months ago, but I still hadn't tried. So I was like, okay, I'll do the update, and then tomorrow I will play the crap out of this. It'll be super fun. And then I did just that. I downloaded the update. I woke up in the morning. I sat down. I have the whole steering wheel gas pedal set up. It's great. And then I had to download the expansion, which was another 20 gigabytes. Both of these updates were 20 gigabytes. I had to delete things off of my thing to make room. It's a whole nightmare. Every time I try to play video games, I'm reminded that I don't enjoy every aspect of it, whether it be like Starfield is the one I talked about on the podcast a few weeks ago. I gave that a go for like 2 days. It was fun, but I played it too much and I hurt my hands. And then it also wasn't all that fun once I kind of got into it too. So I don't know, that kind of game isn't for me, I guess. But Forza is. And I did finally, like that day, you know, hours later, I got logged in and I was able to play the rally expansion a tiny bit. I would like to play it after this, but I record these late at night on Saturday and then post them first thing Sunday. So know that while you're watching this, I'm probably playing Forza. But right now it's too late because with the steering wheel and gas pedal and everything, I'm just on my floor, and I don't think the people that live underneath me would enjoy that. And with that, we come up on almost an hour. And by almost an hour, I mean almost 50 minutes. These podcasts, every week, I finish off my list. This time I had enough that we really made it farther. But I never get through the whole thing, like the whole 59 minutes, without running out of things to talk about. And then the magic kicks in. Not that these are that entertaining, but I have come to trust that I will fill the time. I don't want to talk about the weather, because that's kind of the cheapskate way out. But we have had crazy storms that have been wild. My power hasn't gone out, and knock on wood, it won't go out during this podcast, you know? I think it's settled down by now too, but it's gotten nuts. I know a lot of the power was out in my town and whatnot. And it's that time of year, man, where it's just dark, cold, windy, rainy, and maybe even snowing. Canada. Our home and native land. I don't know how to play the anthem, let alone the anthem in open sea. So, back to the same synth sound you've heard for nearing an hour. You bored of it yet? I don't know if this synth will make it in every podcast. Like I said, I still change my mind every day of whether or not I'm keeping it. But it's so fun, man. And I do... Oh, what did I... Oh. I thought something failed, but I just hit the wrong button with my foot. There's buttons everywhere. This recording setup has gotten out of hand in many a way. But it's not just a recording setup, man. I make podcasts in here. We play guitar with ambient echo that lasts a very long time. That's part of the fun of this room. I've never been one to name things like guitars or studios. But hey, if you have an idea for a name for your home studio or my home studio, throw it out there. Maybe I'll hit Command S and save something with that name. This room has evolved over the years, though, like crazy. I got a Facebook memory today that was like an update of an album that I never put out. Still working on it, back and forth there in the background. There's a super heavy metal project that I've got a bunch of songs written for, but just I haven't felt like doing it all that much. Like, it hasn't been the time for me to have the big freak out. I've had my own freakouts, so we don't have to record any more of them, you know, for the past couple years there. I did work on it over the beginning of the pandemic, though. Like, it was a great outlet for all kinds of stuff like that. Anyways, that's a heavy metal album called Silver Tree. Oh, and that's a lot of echo now. And anyways, I saw a Facebook memory, because I filmed a bunch of that, and I've shared a bunch of it already. On Facebook today, and it was basically the similar angle that we have now, and obviously the same room, but it was crazy to see, you know, how much better the lighting is now with even the same lights, but just, you know, a couple years knowledge of how to use them. And, you know, it's maybe the same camera, but you get better at it, and the progress, you know, the progress. And at one point there was like 4 guitars hung up behind me. You know, to this day, it's funny that of the ones you can see back there, they don't all work, so we have essentially maybe 4 guitars that are working right now back there. Need those parts. But I didn't even have, like, you know, that was my Dingwall bass and my old Epiphone Explorer. I've gone through a lot of Explorers over the years. I love the guitars, but I've been searching for the one, you know, a made in America shiny black one was on the list. And none of them were that until the one I have now. So, hey, we're trading in and up. If I had infinite money, I'd buy another one, and it would be a white one from Japan, because, in my opinion, the black one looks best with the American styling, and the white one looks best with the Japanese styling. We're talking about the pointy guitar. There, for those non-gearheads. Yes, America makes a white one too, I know. Well, they don't right now, but it's out there. But it's not all white, and I'm super picky. And we're talking about the dream budget here, so I get to be picky, you know? No, it's definitely a dream budget, because the white one that I don't own, that I would like to own, would cost me like $12,000 or $8,000. Like, I will never own one. They're a vintage thing at this point, and they've gotten out of hand. Thanks a lot, James Hetfield. We bring it back to Metallica. I think the guitar might be distorting a tiny little bit because the batteries are dying in it. And that'd be a good reason to end the podcast. But we ain't gonna do it! We're gonna make it all the way to the end, even with a tiny little bit of crunch. Because who doesn't love that little bit of crunch? Right? Is that what's happening? I don't know. This guitar also has the ability to be way too loud. Like, you can just distort it with the flick of a switch if you want. And it's a great distortion. Like, it's not distortion, but it makes the pickups incredibly loud. And it will basically distort anything you're plugged into. So my secret to a heavy metal sound... Well, let's share that. That'll be how we end this podcast, is talking about some gear I have and some gear I don't have, but used to have and will have again. The secret to the best heavy metal sound I've ever had in my life is amp blending. So it's, well, to share the whole thing, it'd be this guitar in kill mode, I call it. So that crazy distortion, bridge pickup, you know, how to make the guitar the loudest and chunkiest. Not what we need right now. Into my pedal board of analog goodness, there's an ISP decimator for a noise gate that's running in parallel with another one. I talk about it every week, it's fine. Compressor, a Maxon OD808, and my Mesa Boogie into a Captor X so you don't have to get evicted. But when I say amp blending, I used to own a Marshall Origin, I believe it was the 20 watt head, and it was awesome. Sold it during the pandemic when, you know, money is needed. And now what I do to make a similar sound is I run my Axe-Fx in parallel with like a Marshall type sound. I can't run the amp and the podcast stuff at the same time because I blow the breaker, but I can at least give you that crunchy Marshall sound that I like. It's based off of an Eddie Van Halen type sound, but not. There we go, there's your vibrato button. But basically you take a sound like that, and like I said, I can't fire up my Mesa Boogie for real right now, but I do have versions of it that are digital. It sounds kind of like, oh, not like that. That's not it. Oh my god, these are old presets, man. I don't use all that many. I really only have like 5 or 6 that I use, you know, when I'm making a bunch of music. What does my Mesa Boogie sound like? Kind of like this? Yeah. So imagine, if you will, that sound blended with so that last sound had a lot more low end and like ooh to it. This one is all attack. It happens to have a little bit of like chorus on it too, which sounds cool when you blend them. But the main part is just that it has more attack and the other one has more sustain, sort of in its own way. And there we go. We're going to end with Chunk a Chunk, not with ambient wishy-washy. This has been episode 17 of the Rick Chappell podcast. We're going weekly. It's going great. Click on some of the other videos. Do those things. Head over to www.rickchappell.com. That's RickChappell.com. You know it. I've been Rick Chappell. You've been an audience. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.